Yo, what's up? We are Grown A Geeks. This is Weigh In Wednesday. You are awesome for being here. What's going on tonight's show, August 9th, 2023. Time to pick up a topic that I know is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
Tonight is a gaming episode.
Yeah.
We're going to get into some gaming.
Right.
Talk about some challenges that exist in the gaming community, if you will.
Yes, sir.
Tonight's topic is accessibility.
Accessibility
In gaming.
Yes.
And this comes right on the heels of Evo, major Street Fighter tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
There's some topical information there as a Blind Warriors Vin had a successful round at Evo. He's a completely blind streamer, content creator. He lost his eyesight at age 6 due to cancer and had a nice little run at Evo, surprisingly enough. And I would imagine playing a game like Street Fighter would prove somewhat challenging to not be able to see. But you go and you see how he plays, and my man has memorized character movement, combo distance, and is able to play based on sound.
Yep.
He listens for the footsteps, like knowing.
So that's not entirely true.
Well, sound is a part of one of the elements.
That is a part of it, yes, but it's not specifically the footsteps. So that's actually a really good jumping in point for what I wanted to talk about, because especially since Street Fighter 6 came out, there's been so much discourse in the gaming community about how people who aren't as able-bodied as others, they experience video games way different than somebody like you or I would.
Right.
Whereas I'm not myself, I'm not completely super able-bodied. I get hand tremors, hand spasms every once in a blue moon, and that really hurts me as far as playing a video game. But most of the time I get by okay. I get by just fine because these guys still work, right? You got people who don't even have hands.
Yeah.
You have people who can't see. You have people who can't see. You just have people who have a difficult time playing certain games in general. And not necessarily their fault, but it's not fair to them that they can't enjoy the games that you or I enjoy because they can't experience it the way that I do or the way that you do, something like that, right?
Right.
So in the case of I already forgot his name. Damn shit. I already
Blonde Warrior.
Yeah, there you
Sven.
go. Yeah, in his case, and specifically with Street Fighter 6, Street Fighter 6, I've been mentioning forever, has so many good accessibility options that includes, of course, the big one being modern controls, one button supers, all that good stuff, right? But you also have a lot of things you can set certain sounds to happen when certain things happen. So like you were saying, he can hear if footsteps are happening. It's not necessarily the case. It's more so that they have put a sound to replace footsteps for him so he can hear when a character is moving versus when a character is like doing a punch or something like that, right? So it makes it easier for him to play the game along everybody else, because the thing that he was already like not experiencing the same as everybody else, he can now enjoy that at roughly around the same level, because his sight is no longer the main issue keeping him from playing the game. The game has allowed him to do whatever it is he wants to do, as long as he's willing to listen for certain sound cues that he can set himself in the game.
So that to me is still top tier in terms of skill. And I would almost say commitment to a craft.
Yes.
Kudos to Street Fighter. I've finally picked up my copy of Street Fighter, and I'm playing through World Tour right now. And my character is, I want to say she's like level 20. She's currently working through Chun-Li style. I'm searching for Bosch. We've just recovered the bag, and I've been to, I think it was Italy. What's the gladiator's name?
Oh, Marisa.
I've met Marisa, and it's I'm definitely digging it. And I will say, as when and anybody's welcome to go back and see our Street Fighter 6 special episode, but as you had mentioned, I definitely feel that Street Fighter 6 as a whole is a much more inclusive game now than it might have been otherwise. Having modern controls, because there's actually 3 control options, right? Because you have like your standard classic controls where you have to input each button movement. You have the modern controls, which are abbreviated or abridged versions of those controls.
Yes.
And then you have simplified controls, which, though they limit the character's full range of combat capabilities, still gives a player a fighting chance where they may not have had one, because being able to pull off some of those specials require movements that ain't always easy to do if you're not a, dare I say, a seasoned gamer. You don't necessarily have to be a veteran gamer, but if you're not a seasoned gamer, it can still prove a little difficult. Let's see. Cassius Slay adds in, given the reaction time it would take for the brain to register the sound and then instinctively react, that's pretty freaking amazing.
Exactly.
And I would absolutely agree. Watching him play is quite interesting. He's got a YouTube channel, and again, it's Blind Warriors Vin. I will, why the hell not? We'll throw the link in the chat for anybody that wants to see his YouTube channel. Of course, while you're at YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. Follow Grown A Geeks. Cat follows Splenda MG.
Y'all
do all the follows. Find us all. And let's see. Speaking of Splenda, hey, we're gonna bring her in. So we've got Sharkies in here today. We've got Sharkies in here. Hello. But yeah, you definitely you check out his fighting and watch his gameplay, and it is very impressive to see. Much as you would expect, there's a certain bit of setup that takes place to initiate the fight, and then controls are handed to him, and he plays. And he has, if I'm not mistaken, a modified controller. I did get a chance to kind of peek at it. It's pretty cool looking, and that's one of the things I'm sure we'll get into as we talk about some of the different accessibility options that are out there.
Right.
But back to Street Fighter, I had an opportunity to play, and I was playing in the Battle Hub with my created character, and I have not unlocked what's the colorful attack options? Is it
the colorful attack options?
Like you use it to get yourself out of a corner.
Oh, the drive.
Yeah. So my character has not unlocked drive options. And as I was fighting through one of the people that I was fighting against online was able to beat me because he had those options. But it was the first time I felt like when I was playing online, I didn't just immediately assume I was going to have they were just going to wipe the floor with me and that I was wasting my time.
Right.
And it kept it enjoyable. No controllers were broken in the playing of Street Fighter online. And that to me is a huge step in the right direction because I've been playing video games for quite some time. And while there are some games that I do better than others, Street Fighter is a tried and true favorite. But when you compare that to something like a Tekken or some of the other 2D fighters, like an SNK fighting
Right.
game,
Right.
and David could probably go through a whole list of fighting games, but when you look at some of the combos required and techniques necessary to be successful in those games far outweigh my skill level. And so those, I play them. I play story mode. I play the computer because I enjoy gaming, but it becomes difficult to really take advantage of the online gameplay because my skill level is not where I want it to be. It is no fun playing online.
Right.
I get online and literally become a practice dummy for somebody who wants to perfect a specific technique. And I have no chance of stopping that because that's what he wants to work on. And it's like, well, we're not going to do this anymore. And then the game sits in the corner and it collects dust. So it ends up being something that only gets played locally on, couch co-op type things. When people come by and they look at the game collection, like, oh, let's play this. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's pick up the 3 But we try to get out there and play against some of these other people. And I'm not having fun. This isn't what I came to do. This is not how I want to spend my free time. And so I think modern controls shows that Capcom at least is aware of some of the different challenges to accessibility. What are some of the overall accessibility challenges you think the gaming industry has as a whole?
Oh man, well, it's easier to say which ones don't, right? So
probably, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it comes down to it really just comes down to the two things: it's physical and mental, right? So you'll have like obviously the physical ones. You'll have people like Blind Warrior, you have people like Broly Legs who have some kind of physical disability, either blindness, or in Broly's case, he can't walk or use his hands or arms correctly, right? So you have to if you really want to play the game, you have to kind of adapt. And with Blind Warrior, especially with Street Fighter 6, it's a lot easier for him because he can just listen for the moves, he can listen for the footsteps and all that. Broly Legs, since he can't function since his arms don't function like normal, he plays with a controller in his mouth. He just plays with his mouth, and he's one of the top competitors out there in Street Fighter. So that is to say, that's just me saying, like, if Broly Legs can do it, you can do it, right?
Yeah.
But you also have the mental side of it, because competitive games aren't for everybody. They're just not. I can't deny it.
Now, I would like to interject.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
That's fine. Go for it.
So, whenever you say things like, hey, fighting games aren't for everyone, typically, at least I would assume that, let me finish. I would assume that most people immediately picture people who are just bad at fighting games. And that it's not for them, right? Or they can't handle the competitiveness of it, right? Now, let me finish. So, I would argue that when I hear fighting games aren't for everyone, I hear that, the one everyone else hears too. But I also hear the people who make the fighting game community toxic, just extremely toxic, which is what pushes a lot of people out of fighting games. who fighting games could be for them, but you have these doo-doo heads who ruin it for everyone. Or at the very least, ruin it for those who would potentially do well at it if they weren't facing such a toxic community. And it's not just with fighting games. Obviously, there's other things as well, things like MOBAs, anything that's going to be a competitive type of game will have that. So I would argue it's not that competitive games aren't for everyone. It's competitive games aren't for everyone, including those who poison the environment.
There's absolutely a degree, well, not even a degree, but there's a lot of truth to that. If you take something, we'll take a popular title like a Call of Duty, even just a first person shooter. It doesn't even have to be a fighting game. But as you pointed out, anything that is competitive in nature, you're gonna have those toxic players. It could be sports, it could be video games, it could be the spades table at your cousin's house, it could be the dominoes table. You get the wrong people sitting down at a game of Uno, and that toxicity can come through.
Myself and one of our friends, we don't play Uno together for a good reason, but that's okay.
And when you but yeah, I mean, like anytime you have that toxicity that exists in any form of competitiveness, it is a detractor when you look for the people who are there to enjoy, when you look for the people who do just want to have fun, for lack of a better phrase. And you have to understand that if a game is in fact competitive in nature, just by the simple fact that there is competition, there will be a winner, there will be a loser. And because of that, it gets into it really kind of gets into a whole philosophical aspect where people talk about, like, you know,
if you ain't first, you last, Ricky Bobby.
Right. If you ain't first, you last. You have people who, you know, don't want to hand out participation trophies, and people who are literally just looking at it like, in order to prove yourself, you have to prove yourself. If you don't win, you don't win. There is no going easy. And I'm notorious. If I play with my nieces and nephews, you know what I'm saying, they want to pick up the controller, play the game, they got to learn. You know what I'm saying? Now, I will typically try to pick something that, like, I will go through the aspect. That's what I use my practice. I want to practice specific moves. I want to practice certain combos, which gives them a little bit more advantage, because instead of going all the way in and taking advantage of this kid who doesn't know how to play the game and beating him to a pulp in the corner, I'm using it as a time to bond and practice and play, and it allows them to get some enjoyment out of it, because they're going to get some hits. Even if it's just button mashing, they can enjoy. Maybe I take a round or two just so that it keeps them involved and engaged and interested. But ultimately, once they start getting, you know, I got a nephew, once he starts talking that smack, I got to show him that, like, there's a big difference between what you're doing and what I'm doing. And, you know, there's a way to do it where it's not so toxic. But the average online community, that's not how it's going to go.
So I have a question, kind of, sort of, for David. It's more for your input. And I don't know. It's probably nothing. But I was thinking, you know how there's certain rules of etiquette within the fighting game community, correct?
There is, yes.
So, like, for instance, cheesing is frowned upon, right? Generally speaking.
Specify that.
Well, like, there's some...
Spamming the low sweep type thing?
Yeah, there's, like, a specific move that's really difficult to block, and it's just kind of a cheap move, and it hasn't been patched out yet, and it hasn't been banned in the thing. So it's kind of like, okay, don't do that, right?
Okay, I see what you're saying now. I get it. Okay, so generally, if there's a move that is perceived like that, it is not like it's not an unbeatable move. There is an answer for it. But if you generally like if you use the same move, I mean, yeah, it works and nobody's gonna stop you from doing it, but everybody's kind of gonna be looking at you a little.
I think I've made it a little more complicated than it should be. Just hanging out with your bros. You don't cheese, right? Cool. Same as you don't screen cheat, right? If you're like doing like, a 4V screen thing, like you're doing some GoldenEye or Time Splitters or something. Anyway, so I don't know why I chose GameCube games or whatever.
No, I mean, I would agree that is understood gaming etiquette.
So, if that's the case, why can't it be a thing of we better police people who are just being dicks? Like, oh, this guy's being a dick. Like, why isn't there better rules of etiquette and decorum within the fighting game, just specifically the fighting game community? But obviously, we could use that overall.
So it is a little different in the fighting game community versus like something like a COD lobby or something, right? Where both are like generally like shit talking is part of the game, like that is a mental part of the game, but there is a thing as too far, right? And a lot of us in the FGC understand that, like, it's one of those things like, all right, cool, you can say whatever you want about me, don't bring my kids into it, don't bring my family into it, blah 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 blah, stuff like that. You do have that small pocket of people who just don't know how to shut the fuck up. But for the most part, everybody in the community is like, hey, let's 11, let's bring it back down to like a 6. You're doing a little too much right here.
So what I mean though is, like, okay, so you have that level of etiquette, right?
Yes.
Smack talks, like, okay, it's part of the thing, whatever.
Yes.
Cool. Yes. Then that's alienating a huge group of people who would potentially be into it otherwise. There are certain levels, and once again, this comes into accessibility because that's what we're talking about, correct? So it's very much a boys' club kind of thing. Not to say that girls don't shit talk too, however, it does make it a very unwelcoming environment, especially whenever guys don't realize how far they're going. It might be a lot more offensive to someone else than it is to you and your bros.
Okay, and so here's I won't say the issue with that, but looking at the comment that's on the screen right now, it's Cassius Slay says, because unless you paid for my game, you can't determine how I play. There are certain mechanics that are built into a game. And when those mechanics are built into the game, there is the potential for those mechanics to be exploited. As such, if they see, if I can get you out of your zone through the smack talk, then that's going to give me the advantage that I might need in this game. Now, I know with some games you can turn off audio so that you can't hear the other person.
And that would be an example of good accessibility for people who may not want to participate in that more potentially extremely toxic part that seems to be mandatory in a lot of games these days. So
it's less about mandatory, and I think it's one of those things where it becomes a situation, and I'm going to tread carefully here because I see the point that you're making, and while I'm not disagreeing with that point, I do want to say that we don't get to police other people's feelings on the matter, and if somebody chooses to be toxic for the sake of being toxic. And we'll go back to, everybody, it's an understood joke to say the Xbox Live lobbies. When, I think back to those Halo lobbies and the Call of Duty lobbies. And even right now, if I go and I pick up the newest Call of Duty and I'm playing online, the pre-match lobby where everybody's there, you can hear everybody who's got a mic. I got to block my own teammates sometimes just because I don't care to hear what they're constantly saying over and over and over in the way they're spitting it out. But at the same time, if I choose to play that game, I have to accept that that is either a part of it, or I do what I can to not be a part of it. And sometimes that's going to mean not playing a particular title because there's no avoiding certain things.
So you're saying then this is not something that can be fixed for accessibility, period. So we should just give up.
That's
essentially what that is. Oh, just don't play the game then.
But what you're saying is, and be mindful now.
I'm very mindful. I'm a woman who's played video games my whole life,
and with brothers who ruined this. I want to say what you're saying is you don't like it, so everybody else has to change.
I'm not saying I don't like it. That just happens to be a thing I don't like it too. But I mean, a potentially large group of people who would maybe get into this otherwise cannot get into it now because the community as a whole has decided they want to continue to be toxic.
But see, you're so still, but it's, that's still somewhat oversimplifying the issue, because I would say that a majority of people are not like that. But because of the level of toxicity that can exist, it only takes one player in a lobby to ruin that lobby. It's not even like it's a bunch of people. And a perfect example is when I sit down, I play my younger brother. When I play online with my younger brother and we're playing Call of Duty, he cannot play the game without talking shit to somebody. He just can't do it. It's a part of the gameplay for him. But he doesn't go so far. And like the moment the round is over, win or lose, he's like, "Hey, I had fun. Hey man, they came with it." And he goes and he looks and he'll send him. He's like, "Yo, bro, you was dope out there." Da, 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 da. Same guy. He was literally like giving verbal video game. I want to use the right terminology here so nothing gets flagged, but like they're going in on one another in the game. Yeah. So as soon as the round is over, it's all ha ha ha. You was dope. You did your thing.
I understand all of that. And I'm only cutting off because I get all of that. Like, I understand where you're going. I understand all of that. It's more, I'm not trying to say we need to legislate attitudes or any of that. No, I mean, why is that not a thing that we can't find a solution or a compromise even? And that's just, even if it's such a thing, like you said before, you have some games where you can mute audio or whatever. Why can't we have more of those options in more games? Just something that makes it a little better. I'm not saying we have to control anyone or, oh, I bought this game, so you can't tell me what to do kind of thing. Like, you can do whatever you want still to a point, but there are ramifications when you go too far, number one, but that's besides the point. It's not really what we're talking about necessarily. It's more, how can we make this so that we can have more people who want to play? We can build the community and make it so where everyone can have a better time together.
The options for that would simply be to,
because you still can't deny that there's
outside of providing, and I hate to say it this way because it's going to sound like a dude bro talking here, but outside of providing a safe space for gaming, there's, like you would have to have multiple lobbies available. You would have to have a beginner's lobby. You would have to have a, what I'm saying? Like you can set it up by skill level, by rank,
and there are fighting games I know that do that. There are games that do that. So that is a solution going forward. And I know there's never going to be an idea. I'm just going to stop because no one's really understanding what I'm trying to say. Maybe because I'm a shark who likes Coca-Cola, but I'm going to assume it's because I have a different point of view and I'm not in the best state of mind to really explain what I'm trying to say. So I'm detecting a lot of kind of toxicity myself with everything. So I'm just not going to talk about it anymore.
Well, honestly, I would think in a conversation with me, especially, I wouldn't want there to be any toxicity. I'm all about trying to understand and see the other perspective. And it's like what you would be suggesting is games have to be made to be inclusive. Games have to be made.
I'm not saying they have to be made to be I just thought that's what we were talking about, is inclusivity in games, and I'm just bringing up a potential issue.
Oh no, I am all for
with accessibility with games, especially when it comes to people who tend to get bullied a lot in games. There's a reason why a lot of women, especially, don't feel comfortable shit talking in games. They don't feel comfortable even going in these lobbies or even having a name that sounds like someone could piece together that they're a woman.
Right. And I've seen examples of that. I mean, anytime you watch a female streamer play, you know what I'm saying? It's like, for some reason, I mean, it goes back to just like in a general sense in that regard, that probably just stems from all types of inbred toxic masculinity that's existed for years. Because I'm sure if you and I were to play certain games, I would probably get my ass kicked by you being a better gamer than me.
I don't believe that thing with men will not be reined in. Men can men can absolutely act with some sort of level of decorum. Everyone has the capability of acting out of pocket in general. Men do have communities that are not toxic and extremely misogynistic. It's difficult to find sometimes, but yeah, like there should be, and I like that yes, it's bullying is a big part of the comment that Jeffrey just put there. Yeah, it's something. There should be more, like there should be better ways to enforce some kind of ramifications. Yes, you're free to say whatever you want, but you're not free from the consequences.
Absolutely. So, and I think too,
like, how is it fair that someone can report someone else and the report goes through because they just didn't like the way they played? But if someone else goes and reports, oh, this person completely like dogpiled everyone else on me and bullied me out of a lobby. I'm not saying this necessarily happened to me. This is things because I don't put myself in that situation. But I've had similar instances in Final Fantasy 14. There's a reason why I don't play tank unless I have like a full team of people I know that I'm playing with, because I have been bullied out of a dungeon before when I was learning tank. So it's bullying in general seems to be an extremely large problem within the gaming community. I know it's in everything, but I think there should be
what would be the
women won't be reined into? No, what, I don't know. I think that's a silly comment. The men won't be reined in. I don't know, but maybe because I'm not a guy, I don't get it. But
well, okay, so let's take it another step, because I think in fairness, everyone understands what you're saying. What would you recommend, or since we know that there are some few options that are available now, what do you think could be done on a broader scale that would make the community as a whole more accessible, since that is in fact the conversation we're having here, and we can all throw out ideas. And I think the lobbies and having those options in the lobbies is a good start. What else would you think could be done?
What would really help is some sort of like a major campaign or movement of some sort that's pushed by multiple gaming corporations, to not necessarily something cheesy like end bullying or put a stop to bullying, but just something to unite gamers a little better and to push out the people who won't be reined in. And like, because if anyone should be bullied out of the game, it should be the people who are doing the bullying in the first place. It should be the ones who won't control themselves, who won't hold back from like saying just whatever comes into their mind because it's in the heat of the moment, it's in the heat of the game. Do you know how many major things have happened because that have been blamed on video games? That we don't need that kind of toxicity, just attention in general. Enough people try and blame shootings and stuff on video games. Right. We don't need to give legitimate reasons. Like there was just off the top of my head, there's a news story of a guy who was so busy playing his video game, he neglected his baby and the baby died. Like, this is stupid. Like, cool, he's in the game, he's in the moment, but it's gotten so bad because that kind of activity fosters that kind of behavior. Like I kind of behave, you know what I'm trying to say? Maybe not.
Yeah, but I mean that just sounds like an asshole kind of guy. You know what I'm saying? And
But
and I think
that's what I mean.
again,
There's so many, and that attitude is so well praised within the community.
But I mean, you got like Andrew Tates of the world. You have, like every time I turn around, I see a new person popping up on social media who's trying to tell men how to be men and blah 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 blah
And
blah. And I'm
they
like,
found a safe haven within the gaming community because they know they can be sheltered there.
and
So
I
they
don't
fit in.
necessarily think that it's. I don't know. Like, I am not a fan of the toxicity that exists in the games. And even when we're talking, when I sit down to play some of these fighting games, I know I'm going to go online and get my ass handed to me. But I find there's just as many people who are like recognizing my skill level and that I'm trying to learn, and I get the good games afterwards, and they're willing to play with me as the guy who is literally putting me in the corner, spamming a couple of moves and beating me to a pulp where the enjoyability factor is at zero. I don't run into that nearly as often.
I think part of it too is just building that relationship with whoever it is you're playing with. So maybe something, once again, as we're trying to have a conversation of how to remedy some of these things, maybe have like a brief moment where you can like talk in the lobby beforehand, like before a match. And I know that does exist in some games, but have something like that, or so you can kind of like say, hey bro, what's going on, how you doing, yada yada. So this way you can kind of lay down that initial decorum. If I have someone just like walking up into my house and then talking all this smack about me when I never talked to this person, I don't know who they are. So like, that's what I mean, something along those lines. And honestly, with as far as you have to be emotionally strong enough to be able to not take things personally as an attack. Do you know how few people have that ability, especially whenever people really go off? Because if that's the case, then who decides where the line is? And I think that's a big part of what we're kind of going back and forth on too. Like, I think the line should be over here, and you guys say this line over here is just fine.
It's not so much about well, just using that statement. It's not that we're saying that this line is fine. We're saying that's where the line is. Because the only way to, as it shows right here, really the only way to deal with these players who are extremely toxic like that is to report them. And unless they are reported by multiple people, it's not really going to be looked at. At the same time, it is like I am 100% with you, and I think it would be fantastic if there was just an option in every game to select what kind of lobby you want to go into. And I think people would then see that, you know what, the super toxic lobby, not as full.
So do you know which game is actually doing all these things we're talking about and helping to fix these things? Street Fighter.
And that is why we're using, and honestly,
so guess Street Fighter is already doing a lot of these things that I've been saying. So they are helping to regulate that line. They are giving you an option to build a relationship. You can just play the game if you want to, but just know there are going to be ramifications if you just play the game and you sit there and pop off as much as you want and bully the other person, and they don't understand what it is because there's not really any context there.
Right.
So, and they're going to report you, and you have to deal with whatever that ramification is then.
Yeah. And that's why we are definitely giving props to Street Fighter for their inclusive attitude, their innovative approach to making games more accessible and more fun to play. And if there were more games following the lead, because Street Fighter 6 is a new game. That game has recently come out. We know that this has existed for some time, and yet it's just now at Street Fighter 6 that it's becoming a regular thing. Because I go back all the way, just thinking about, we were talking about the lobby, going all the way back to Phantasy Star Online. There was an online lobby. You load into the game. You have your character. You can go to the store. You can buy items and blah 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 blah.
I'm extremely familiar with PSO.
Right. Well, for the people who
who are not, yes.
Right.
Are you talking like PSO2?
I'm talking PSO1,
like
Dreamcast.
OG boy, gotcha.
Right, the first one on Dreamcast, and it was like there was an online lobby, and in order to even jump into the game, now you could jump into the game by yourself and run some solo, but there were certain areas you couldn't access unless you had other players. So that community you talked about, you had to like, get a team together in the lobby before you jumped into the game. And I'd gotten to the point because that was one that I played. Just that was like at some point that was the only game I was playing.
Yeah, that was out me for a very long time.
I had maxed out everything on the character, so I was one of those people that took it upon myself because someone did it for me. I saw an example of it, and so someone did it for me, and I then decided I would be one of those people who would drag the noobs through to beat the boss. I saw that happen again later on with Destiny. There was a lobby and you could, kind of meet up with players in the lobby before you jumped into the match. And then sometimes when you were actually in the game, you could like, emote and talk to different people in the game. Maybe you could like find somebody to partner up with and you'd go and do a couple of missions together, whatnot. There are games where that sense of community and that level of toxicity is reduced. But then I think about games like Grand Theft Auto. When you play Grand Theft Auto online or Red Dead Redemption online, I'm playing Red Dead Redemption online, and hey, I just want to go and do these missions and see what the online gameplay is about. And I'm being chased by, 6 guys on horses over here. I just got in the game, and I'm being lassoed and dragged. You know what I'm saying? And it's
and that makes it less fun to play. So, but absolutely. At the same time, that's why you have like different servers and stuff you can join. So that's what I mean is that you have. There's a way that video games are progressing to help alleviate some of these issues. Also, I don't even understand what exactly that comment means, so I'm not really going to address it because I'm just going to make more people mad.
Well, no, I mean, that's honestly just because every game is not as progressive currently. Yeah. That's how I interpret that. And that's what you're saying. And that's what we're looking to improve upon.
Yes, there are games that are moving forward with that, and we're seeing once again from Street Fighter that it has been such a huge success that I'm hoping other fighting games. David, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I hope other fighting games start to follow in a similar vein. So
speaking of that, let's what.
Also, Cassius, thank you for that last comment there. Sorry I get a little flustered. I'm dealing with some stuff right now. So
No. And honestly, that's why I love having you on because you can always provide insight that I don't have. And thank you for being here with us. And see, we made it through that and we're getting around because check this segue out. So David, what do you think is one of the holdups to making this type of accessibility regular? Is it more expensive to have multiple servers? Is it a cost issue?
So a lot of people would have you believe that it is a cost issue because there's so many games out there right now that do not have extensive accessibility options like a Street Fighter.
Grown A geeks.
Yeah, like a Street Fighter 6 or a Last of Us 2. But that's not necessarily the case. So like it's basically just a flip of the switch. You can just put it in. It doesn't cost. It barely costs anything as long as you plan for it.
What was that, David?
No,
you said you can just put it in. What? Okay.
Oh, hush. Anyway, yeah. As long as you plan for it, like in the beginning stages of development, you can just throw the accessibility options in there. Like that's exactly what Last of Us 2 did, and that has some of the best accessibility options I've ever seen in a game.
Like, what are some of the, like we discussed some of the various accessibility that was in Street Fighter.
Right.
What are some of the accessibility options that are in games? When I think of accessibility, I think of players like Broly Legs who may have some physical impairments.
Right.
And there would be some restrictions on their ability to maybe manipulate controls. But I also think back to games that I think of every game has the warning at the beginning. This game contains sequences of flashing lights and things like that. They don't want to trigger seizures for anyone who may be susceptible to it.
So that in itself isn't an accessibility feature. That's more so something that developers are legally required to put in the game.
It's covering their butts.
Yeah, you
right.
Like if you even think that you're going to have anything that's going to like be classified as photosensitive, you have to put that disclaimer.
Especially since the Pokemon event.
Exactly.
But what about games like there was a particular Call of Duty that had a scene at an airport, and they gave you an option to play said scene or not play said scene because it had depictions of certain things.
So that in itself can be considered an accessibility option, because you may have somebody who's just, it might be triggering to somebody, or it might go against somebody's their culture or their faith or anything like that. So that can be considered an accessibility option. But when people say accessibility in games, it's more so just like outlining like the few things like high contrast mode, audio cues, easier difficulty options, more difficulty options.
Lowering the difficulty settings is an accessibility feature.
Yes,
it is.
Especially when you're talking like mid-game or something like that. You get to a point where just the difficulty spike just goes straight up your butt, and you're like, I can't do this, but I don't want to start over. I'm not going to play this game.
So for stuff like that, like generally when you're playing a game, it teaches you what it wants you to do as you're playing the game, but sometimes that difficulty spike might just ramp up a little too much, and it might have been
sorry.
It might have been outside of what the developers may have intended as far as the scale of that. So there is the option to just change the difficulty in the middle of the game, which still is an accessibility option, though it's not like a traditional one. That's just, you just change the difficulty, whatever. But that still can be considered an accessibility option.
I actually love that there are some games that are letting you change the accessibility option, but they're not giving you any kind of ramifications for it. In the past, for a while, there was a trend where if you change your difficulty settings, then you wouldn't get any achievements for the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which I can kind of understand why they want to do that, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a dick move because they're just achievements. Like, is it really that serious if someone's potentially using it to cheat, when instead it could be helping other people to actually play and finish the game? And I'm going to tell you, if I have a game that I'm having issues with and I can't beat because it gets to a point where it's too hard and I can't change difficulty, I sure as hell am not going to play any DLC that might come out later, which means I'm not going to be buying that DLC that comes out later, where I might have otherwise. So you want more money, there you go. Also, fun fact, the seizure warnings apparently started showing up in video games around mid-1991 or so. So they've been around since most of the late NES and early SNES days.
Cool.
I think SNES was 1990, right?
But see, it's funny because I think back even as far back as like Atari, and I know like some of those games had like ridiculous flashing lights because they had so few graphics that there was no option but to have the flash go, and that was all you had to make it look cool. Tron. No. Like now when you first turned that on, Vanguard, when you get the power-up special in the game Vanguard, God, I'm sold. When you get the power-up special in the game Vanguard, the whole screen does
which game was that, Grandpa?
It's called Vanguard. It's a 2D scrolling shooter.
Was that one on the PS3?
That was before the PS3. The PS3 wishes it had a Vanguard. But yes, right. See, I'm not the only one. Robotron, exactly. There were so many games in that first, because I mean, like you were talking what? Not even 8-bit.
Wasn't that like a major was that like a common death scene that you could get in games? It'd just be a bunch of flashing lights.
Yeah.
To show that you died.
I mean, okay. You had limited pixels, very limited graphics capabilities.
I want to comment on that Dark Souls thing. Now, listen, Dark Souls is not maybe controversial. I don't think Dark Souls is as hard as a lot of people say it is, because if you're sneaky and patient like me, you can cheese through most of the shit in most of these games.
So my baseline for game difficulty is, at this point in my gaming career, if you will, I play default hard. I just play default. When I turn the game on, whatever difficulty is the default setting for the game, that's what I play it on. And it is because I had a history of, when I was younger and I had more time to dedicate to just gaming, I would play everything on the hard difficulty to try to unlock the ultra hard difficulty. Mm-hmm. And I've just gotten to the point now where it's like, you know what? I ain't got time for that. I don't have the mental fortitude to deal with that kind of stress anymore. Like my man said, that is emotional damage. I'm not putting myself through that unnecessarily because there's no point in it anymore.
See, no, I always
miss the bragging rights.
I always used to play games with, like, from the easiest difficulty up through the hardest. Like when I was younger, that's how I love to play my games. So I always started off with the easiest, and I like to play through all of them because sometimes you would unlock different things depending on which mode you beat it in, which meant you had to beat it on like every mode, and you didn't really know unless like you happened to be able to look it up somewhere and it happened to be posted somewhere, or you had it in like an hour or something.
Wait a minute. Is somebody telling me they beat Aladdin on Super Nintendo?
Oh, because it was the Super Nintendo and not the Genesis version. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You got it. Don't get that mixed
up. I was like, wait a minute.
Right? Don't get it twisted. Okay.
I was like, hold on, bro.
The superior one.
You did not. Okay.
And this is coming from me. I had the Genesis one.
Just because, let me tell you something. Wasn't nobody jumping over bananas like that. It just, you wasn't. It was a broken game. But you know what? That also kind of goes back. Like, I remember having. You know what? We also had more cheats available in games back in the day because games were ridiculously hard.
They were.
We had Game Genie. We had Game Shark.
You remember the stupid little codes you'd have to type in to like pick up where you left off? Like, have you played Echo the Dolphin?
I remember the game.
Okay. Did you ever see how long those codes were for Echo the goddamn Dolphin? Okay, not even Linda the cocaine shark, but Echo the fucking dolphin. Okay,
because what you were doing when you went back to load a particular level, you were basically low level coding because you had to put in like 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks, 24 characters per block, like. You had to put in all of these different characters. And what that was doing was that was actually putting in all of the necessary, like, I would almost say like the binary code necessary to load those specifics back into the game.
Oh, and it's like Dr. Mario had really bad ones too.
I remember that from Phantom 2099 from Defenders of the Universe, spinoff character, the Phantom, played by Billy Zane. In a live action movie. But yes, that was the game that I had a notebook full of like college ruled long characters written out. Then one day we finally got memory cards and the world was forever changed.
I think the first time I really took like hardcore notes on sheets was for Sims 1. But no. It was what was the name of it? I can't think of it. Why is it Heroes of Might and Magic? Probably 3, I want to say. And they were all like Monty Python codes. Because that's what Heroes of Might and Magic does.
Yeah. See, and it was those kind of codes right there. Exactly. Cassius Slay is putting up some codes for us, just showing us the really weird, random things. Jeff does point out all the Sega games were too hard. That's why all the kids who got Sega got detention all the time, bringing that frustration to school.
Now, see, you just need to know. Listen, whenever as someone who played a lot of Genesis, now my family tried to make sure that I had 3 brothers growing up. So my parents played video games too. So we didn't have a lot of money, but we tried to always have whatever console came out, like major console came out. We ended up with I think we skipped the Sega Saturn, but we had pretty much everything else that came out in the 90s. That was like a major console. So I preferred Genesis games over pretty much anything else until like N64 came out. Now I did play SNES, but it was mostly RPGs on the SNES. So my normal games. So this is how you got to play your Sega consoles. All right. First of all, it's good if you have multiples. Okay, so if you have multiples. Now I know they repeat a lot of the same games, but it's okay. So this is what you do, okay? You have your frustrating games, you have your lineup. You play your frustrating games first, then you play your chill games after, okay? You go and you start a new save on Echo the Dolphin because no one wants to play past like the first fucking level anyway. So you play a little bit, you go through and you go at people, right? Like a dolphin, and it's really fun. And you jump in the water and make everything swirl up like a little tornado. And you're like, oh my God, everything's gone. Then you're like, you know what? I don't want to play this anymore. So you go and you pop in like columns or some shit like that. And you just, you meditate your brain with these puzzle games. And then maybe a little bit, you finish up with some Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine or something like that. All right. You got to end it out with like the puzzle games. So you're massaging your brain.
You got a whole, I gotta say, you got a whole workout routine. Listen, just took us on a journey right now. I took my games
seriously, okay? Because it was really frustrating playing like versus games with 3 very competitive siblings who are all about the same age as you. Especially whenever it was very much a patriarchal style house. Well, kind of sort of. Mom was absolutely the patriarch, but otherwise, boys rule, girls drool kind of deal. So.
Now, there was at one point I do remember that in video games, finding any cheat codes you could, because like once Game Shark and Game Genie kind of went away, being able to find the codes to put in games, and we'll fast forward a little bit to something like Grand Theft Auto 4, like having the codes that you could type into the phone that would unlock certain things in the game and give you this, give you that. And this is separate from like modding the games on PC, because I've got a whole separate conversation about game modding. But just it was kind of a challenge, and not really Easter eggs, but it was a testament to your friend group or the community for gaming when people got codes, because it was like, I got a code from one friend for this, got a code from that friend for this. And then when I discovered one, I was able to provide one to them that they didn't have. And now they're doing stuff in the game that they didn't know about. And any type of like, exploit in the game or secret level or trick, or because I remember like going back to Halo, like everybody was talking about where to find the skulls. You know what I'm saying? And like, that was a big thing because people would share those positions and locations, and we would make plans to like, hey, what you doing at school, man? Yeah, come on over to the house, let's play some Halo. You can show me where that skull is. And
so I remember when God of War 2 came out, a good friend of mine, but I actually met through PSO, and I'm still friends with them now. Anyway, a good friend of mine had bought God of War 2 for me. I think it came out around August, so it was for my birthday or something. I don't remember. Anyway, and I got it like I think a day early because of how the shipping was. I remember looking up because I love to look through walkthroughs for games like that, just in case I got stuck with something, or also kind of an OCD. I want to make sure I get everything. So, but I also will scour like levels as well because once again, you grow up playing stuff like RPGs on the Super Nintendo, and you learn to click on everything you can, or go and try and hit the A button on everything you can. Anyway,
right.
So I would scour. I was so proud of myself. I found a secret that wasn't on the main GameFAQs walkthrough for it yet.
Ooh, GameFAQs.
Oh, I was like, yo, this isn't listed on here. Yeah, look at that. I felt so special that I found a secret that the person who wrote the FAQ that most people were using hadn't found yet. Yeah, and I was my parents hated me because I for lots of reasons, but also because I tended to waste printer ink by printing out stuff from GameFAQs.
Oh yeah, the game guys, you had to. The walkthroughs back in the day, that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thing.
But I would try and print them on I double side them, so I tried to save paper.
As we're thinking about accessibility, would we say that like the cheat codes and the game genies and the game sharks and all of the different tips and tricks that were existed in games, is that a form of where does that fall in terms of gaming? Because would one look at that as ableism? If we're making the game easier, does that make it more accessible?
So that specifically with cheat codes, I would probably say no, because it's not. It's hard. It's hard to
Singe. What's up, bro?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to compare to an accessibility option versus a cheat code, say something for Infinite Lives could be something that can be seen as an accessibility option for someone who's not that great at that specific game. Say I'm just not having a good day with Rystar or something, right? I could just put in a code and just unlimited lives. I'll just
awesome. I have a note for that, but I'll let you finish.
I'll just beat my head against the wall until I figure it out, and then next time I come back around to that, then hey, I know how to get past this thing. I can get through it. Don't have to use the code.
Right.
I'm more so talking about something like if today I just up and could not hear anymore, right? Mm-hmm. I just couldn't hear shit at all. Subtitles, accessibility option. Okay. Something that can turn audio cues into a visual cue, that's an accessibility option. Actually, Fortnite has a good example of that. There is a setting where you can turn on this setting and it will show you what direction the bullet is coming from, and it's not like one of those things where you have the reticle and you're getting shot at and you see a little splatter of blood.
I was about to say
on the side,
little red flash to tell you left,
right.
Okay,
it is an active visual thing that happens on your screen. It's a little kind of like a lightning bolt, something like that. I don't know, but it's something that helps out a lot of people, because there are some people who just they just can't hear, or they have a hard time hearing, something like that, and that helps them immensely. There's cheat codes can help, but I don't know if I would consider that accessibility, because it's something that you can get through the game with or without. At some point, even if you use them initially, you can go back after you've learned how to get past that particular point, and then you'll be fine without the cheat codes. But if it's something like you can't hear, a cheat code's not going to help you hear. But sure. Turning on this giant red arrow in the settings, that will help me get to the next part of the thing. Absolutely.
But a cheat code, if you level skip, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Things like that. If you're having difficulty, if there's an impairment that keeps you from being able to get through a particular level, while the accessibility option may be better to have the red arrow.
So I had a thing for that. So and I have something for this too. So first of all, the thing is, I don't think disabled person want to be coddled like that. First of all, there probably are. There could be. I'm not going to say that every single disabled person thinks like that, because it would be the same as you saying every disabled person doesn't want to be coddled like that. I think there's a good mixture, but we won't really know. But at the same time, there are absolutely a lot of people who don't enjoy the challenge. It's like, what's that sound going on TikTok? I thought this is supposed to be an RP or a role playing game. What role am I playing? The fucking victim? There gets to a point, then everyone has different points of that, of whenever a challenge is not a challenge anymore. It's just frustrating. But anyway, so the other thing of not being able to get through to a level, right? And then having to use a cheat to get through a level or a mission, whatever. Do you know who actually does a really good job at this? And it really surprises me. Rockstar. when you're playing the actual story mode stuff, if you have a mission and you fail it 3 times, it says, do you want to skip this? And you can skip it. And from what it might just be the difficulty you play on, but I'm pretty sure it's not, but don't quote me on it. I would say Google it. But that would be interesting if it is available on every difficulty. But yeah, they absolutely, and it's on LA Noire, it's on Grand Theft Auto 5, it's on Red Dead Redemption. It's fantastic. It's the only thing that's let me get through certain things like LA Noire. It like, because like there's certain parts in games like something like LA Noire where the controls and the mechanics don't work the way they're intended, either because it's just bad game design or it's something I personally can't grasp, and I don't have a house full of guys that I can just pass the controller off to like I used to whenever I was growing up. I do have David in our roommate, but I don't bother them with my little games. But yeah, so there's sometimes I'm like, I cannot stand the driving in Grand Theft Auto, or just in Rockstar games in general. I hate driving. I hate how horses control. It's weird and stupid. I prefer how they handle in Saints Row better.
Horses were so much better in Two Worlds. Hot take. I said it.
So it's a thing of like, if I didn't have those options in like Grand Theft Auto and LA Noire, then yeah, there are a few games that do that as well. They'll let you lower the difficulty mode. I know Final Fantasy does that, or Final Fantasy 14 does that as well with certain like whenever you do. David, what is it like? Is it just a lot like alliance raids and stuff, or
what do you mean? Oh,
whenever like you fail something, it like it like gives your team a buff or whatever, and then takes the difficulty down.
Well, no, that's just stuff.
Is that just in general?
Yeah.
I don't think it does that with dungeons though.
Not dungeons, just like the boss.
I think it's like it's trials and normal raids. But anyway, so yeah, if that didn't exist for when I was playing something like LA Noire or Grand Theft Auto, I wouldn't have been able to finish those games, because I am like, no matter how much I practice, I am terrible at doing those, especially when it comes to like to tail someone where they don't see you in a car. No, I'm good. I can't. I'm good. I don't want to. I hate doing that on foot, especially in stuff like Assassin's Creed. Like I had quite a few Assassin's Creed I almost put down and never wanted to pick it up again. Naturally, I just kind of like fell off of it, just in general, because it kind of went off the rails. Though I never really bounced back into it after Black Flag. So,
so it's like, well, I think the difficulty in games when we. So here's I'm of two minds on the subject for this thought. As we were talking about the difficulty and how some games will in fact just lower the difficulty or suggest that you lower the difficulty if it sees that you are taking a beating. I also think about the games that if there's a character that talks to you as you as you go to that level restart screen or something, you have someone that has some final words. And, it's like, even thinking about it, we've been saying all this great stuff about Street Fighter, but those boys are Street Fighter, like, what I'm saying? A lot of those characters, they talk a little trash if you lose. And you have to go to your continue screen. And, what I'm saying? It's like when you're younger and you're seeing that and you're reading this trash talking from this video game character, it's a thing where it's like, hey, wait a minute. But then of course we got, move forward to, we get to these Souls games where it's kind of like there's an understood degree of difficulty built into the game. And the one that probably frustrated me the most was, of course, Bloodborne. And having gotten so far in Bloodborne, we got to this part that I just absolutely couldn't get through, couldn't get past. I never finished it. I put it down, never picked it back up. It's fine. You go back before that, I had Ninja Gaiden, and Ninja Gaiden cost me 2 controllers. But it was a pride thing where I absolutely could have lowered that difficulty, and I chose not to because I wanted to beat it on hard, to be able to say that I beat it on hard. And I recognize that that's me. And as I said, now that I've gotten older, I absolutely refuse to do that. And it is more about my time management for games. And the Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and even the one just before Jedi Survivor, Jedi
Last Order or Lost, something like that. I don't know.
The one before Jedi Survivor, the first one.
Yeah.
There's a part in that game where you have to fight certain people, and bruh, like Fallen Order. Thank you.
Fallen Order. Yeah.
You have to fight certain people, and I mean it's been out more than long enough. I'm not forget the spoiler warning on this, but like when you have to fight,
I haven't played. No,
and you know what? I'm not even going to talk about that spoiler. You have to fight one of the like you have to I think it's the first sister or second sister, something like that.
Yeah.
Whew, the game was like, maybe you should try taking the difficulty down. I was like, shut up, I'm going to do this. If I load that game up right now, you know what level I'm on? I'm fighting the same second sister. Because it's just like I refuse to lower the difficulty level. And I have the stim packs, I have the skill set, I have the weapons. I don't have the hand strength to pull off what I need to pull off anymore.
I did that with Code Veronica.
I can't do it.
That was my issue with Code Veronica. Though it was because I got stuck in that fight that's on the plane or whatever, and I didn't have enough healing items to get through the fight. So if I were to pull up my old save on my PS2 memory card, I'd be in the exact same place. And because of that, I've never beaten Code Veronica.
Yeah. I mean, it's what would be the... I don't know that there is an accessibility option, because for me, accessibility is ultimately what makes the game available to everyone.
Right.
And let's get into some of the controllers, because like literally what I'm talking about, I am an able-bodied person. I am, I've got my health, all my limbs work. Granted, I'm a little older, and you know what? Shut up, Singe. But yes, I'm getting a little older now, so it's like my hands, I'm probably not even advanced as David was saying, where he deals with the cramping of his hands a little bit more frequently. I don't even deal with that as much, but I've long complained about PlayStation controllers because I don't like the placement of the D-pads. And it is just a dexterity thing with my hands. I don't know if you can see it on screen here, but I damaged my thumb here when I was a child, and that knuckle is like huge in comparison. And it's on my left hand, which is the controller hand for thumbstick movement. As a result, I can't have my thumbs close together because it'll cramp up a lot faster. So the Xbox controller has always been the preferred controller, just because of the placement of the D-pad and the free joystick. Because of that, when I think of accessibility, I'm like, what are some of the things? How would a player like Broly, like how would he play this? How would Blind Warriors Vin?
So
are there certain games that are going to be just not really?
I think for that, it's because it's so difficult to try and tailor to very unique issues like that. It can be difficult to have every game developer keep that in mind, especially because we're talking about a potentially even smaller group of people. So I'm not saying they shouldn't be I don't think they should have. It's not like I'm saying they shouldn't have accessibility. I'm sorry, it was hard to get that out. But it's more along the lines of, instead of, I think that game developers need to keep in mind that they're, at the very least, that their controls be something that is comprehensive enough that they can be mapped to custom, can be mapped easily to custom controllers. And so when it comes to hardware for accessibility, I think it should be something, or they do have current things. So I know Xbox, that's what we have, partially what you have in the background there. Actually, it might be that whole thing. Xbox did a thing during the Xbox One era of the adaptive controller, which is pretty cool. It's like $100. It starts off with you have like two very large like keypads, like number or like buttons, I guess, in the middle. Yes, this guy in the middle, and then you have those bits on the side. Now it has all kinds of different ports, and it has all the buttons along the top. You can't see it on there, but along the top of the main adaptive controller in the middle, you have all these different ports for the different other buttons. So Y, X, B, A, even like R3, RB, RT, that kind of stuff, right? All of that is along the top. And then you plug in these different controllers to the top. So different buttons, switches, levers, and it has a variety of different ports to plug into. So it's not just a bunch of like those same 3.5 millimeter head jacks. It has 19 of those, but it also has what do you call it? I believe at least it has something to let you plug in, and it's listed on there, a nunchuck from a Wii, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so you can plug in all kinds of things and map controllers however you need to. You even have something called a quad stick for quadriplegics that's controlled with like motions of like breath and things like that, right? It's really cool. If anyone has like just some free time, go look up some different ways that you have for that, or some different ways people that have utilized this controller to specifically adapt to their needs. I really wish that something like this was better supported. But that being said, mostly because it's more of a mainstream company, so it's once again we get to that accessibility. More people know about it because it's Microsoft. That being said, you do have a company called Evil. They're called Evil controllers, right? So they don't have you don't just go to their website and just pick out a controller, right? They will work with people individually to tailor a controller to their needs, to specifically fit their accessibility needs, which is really cool in my opinion. So they make a prototype for you, they send it to you so you can try it out and see how it works. And if it works cool, then awesome, you're good to go. If it doesn't, they'll tweak it some more and get everything working to where you can play games easily, no matter what your issues you might have.
Yeah, I mean, well, the funny thing is, Jeff, and honestly, with some of these controllers, obviously you're only going to need the controller that's, for your requirements. For someone who may not have the option to, and here you can see like all the different options and layouts that are available. I mean, yeah. I imagine this is what people are using. Like when you hear that somebody beats Elden Ring with a saxophone, that's probably, I don't know what's about to play. I don't even know what video that was coming up.
It has those two big buttons there because it's meant for you to use if you're not going to plug in all the extra gizmos and gadgets and stuff. You'll typically have those two big buttons for like your main two, like A and B, and then you'll have like pedals that you plug in to push with your feet for the other ones. So because it's not necessary, it's not always a thing if someone's missing a limb or they can't use a limb. Sometimes it's a thing where they can't use the limb the same way that someone else, like someone that's more able-bodied, would be able to. So they can't hold a controller, but they can move their hand and press it onto a button, like a big button. And so sometimes they would need a large button like that to have a big enough thing where they literally just have to move their hand back and forth. Even though they don't have the dexterity to use their fingers and press smaller buttons, they can use their whole hand and the weight of their hand to press those buttons. So that's the point of having something that large. Like the whole thing it's really interesting. I wanted to do a thing with GameStop when I still worked there, to try and like raise money to buy some of these adaptive controllers for the children's hospitals, but it never really got off the ground. So, and now Xbox One, I mean, I'm sure the children's hospitals here still have Xbox One, but they tend to be a little behind because they were off to the donations mostly. Let's see. Yeah, like they shouldn't be, because honestly, when it comes to things like that, even when it comes to like, the devs think that it's an advantage or whatever, I don't know. I think that needs to be something where if it's something for like a competition, I can kind of understand. And that's something that needs to be, I think, ruled out by the judges instead of just banned across. Like, hey, I have accessibility needs. These are the controllers I use, and then they can, pass their judgment from there.
But see, that right there raises an interesting question, because I think about like, and this is where, let me just say right off the rip, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. I think about controllers like, scuff gaming controllers. Hell, the Xbox Elite controller has additional paddle options underneath the controller. You can buy some. In fact, I've got a, I don't even know what brand this is, but I've got a Battlefield 1 custom controller. Like, it's a corded controller. So you've got all your standard buttons there. You've got the triggers and the bumpers there. But then I have these two radial buttons here that, like, they go up and down. And that gives me 4 additional movement options. And it's something that's just written into the controller. It's just the way the controller is built. When you have these gaming tournaments, when you have these competitions, what level of accessibility is permitted? Because to Sinja's point here, if devs are looking at it saying like, well, it's an advantage, not being funny, but it's like, if I'm able to, like, maybe I'm playing the game and say it's a shooter, I've got to pull the trigger with my forefinger. But if I have 2 buttons on the controller that are going to give me the option to both shoot, and now I can press both buttons and it picks up the inputs for both to be shooting, am I shooting twice as fast?
Now, see, I think what comes with that is, once again, it's if you are entering something like a tournament or something like that, or like, because obviously you can't really, it's the same thing with how we're going back to, we can't really regulate what people do online with their games, right? So if that's the case, then I don't think we should regulate the types of controllers people use when they're just playing in their own house. But if someone's going to a tournament, I assume there are some sort of rules. David, correct me if I'm wrong, since you're more familiar with tournament stuff. If it's something where you bring controllers or something along those lines, you have to bring, I assume, a certain standard of controller. I'm sure there are certain controllers that are banned. And I mean, I don't know exactly how this works, but I believe if it doesn't already, then it should be something along the lines of, if you are trying to enter this tournament and you have accessibility needs, like even something as simple as like, I need this controller that has these back buttons because I have carpal tunnel that won't let me use these top buttons. And so but here's a doctor's note to prove this is what I have going on. And then you present everything to the judges or whoever you're entering with, and then they can make that determination there. And it could even be something where, because they're giving you that allowance to use the controller like that, they have a camera that's zoomed in on your hands to make sure you're not using those top buttons the whole time.
Yeah, I think if it was I could absolutely see that being the way something like that would go down, especially in some of these larger scale tournaments. But I think it does make sense to simply say like, oh, if I need to be accommodated in any way for a tournament, then it has to be cleared and okayed beforehand.
Yeah.
In order to ensure that there's.
It's honestly a similar thing for other things. Like if you have someone who's deaf and is going to a concert, they can usually talk beforehand to say, hey, can I get these accommodations? I'm deaf. Can we make sure we have, does your venue have someone who's signing? I need to make sure that I'm where I can see that person, so on and so forth. Now, David, what are those things called that people like? I know you have one you just ordered. It's just like a box with buttons on it.
It's a hit box or a snap box. Yeah.
So those would technically also be classified as an adaptive gaming controller, and those are very, very, very common. Now that's actually a good example of people also using them to an advantage as well. That's also widely accepted in the community. Some people play better with no joystick. And David, do you want to explain the advantages of that?
There's I mean, there's not really that big an advantage. It's more so just comfort. That's really what it comes down to. There are people who are more comfortable.
I can't hear anyone.
Sorry, I somehow
okay. Oh, I thought that was me. I'm like, oh, don't tell me my stuff.
Yeah.
Like
some
no.
And I'm just sitting here watching, like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What's happening? Okay.
Yeah, somehow I muted myself, but yeah,
Reached over for the fight stick.
Yeah, so there's some people who are more comfortable with this guy. There's more people who are more comfortable with something like this. But then you'll see people that have like snack boxes or hit boxes, which are leverless controllers, which don't have the joystick. Of course, instead of your joystick, you have 4 buttons that'll control your left, right, up, and down. And it's not necessarily something that gives you I mean, there is a small inherent advantage for using like a leverless controller because you don't have that. You don't have to do all of this. You could just press buttons, but it's not
quarter circle forward.
That's what I meant that I wanted you to because like I think you explained it to me before where it's a lot more difficult to accidentally press the wrong directional button than it is to accidentally tilt the control the joystick in the wrong direction.
It is, but there's also like gates that you can use on a joystick that'll give you a better sense of control for that. But again, like I said, there is, and like you were just saying, there is a small inherent advantage you have by going with a hitbox versus just a regular arcade stick or a regular like Xbox or PlayStation controller. But it's not something that will like keep you from entering a tournament because somebody will think you're cheating.
Yeah. So that, I guess that's kind of what I mean is that we do kind of already see people using different kinds of controllers that they use them because it's more comfortable for them, because it makes it more accessible for them. So, and I think as far as with, I know one of the comments here was saying that the people who run these tournaments aren't going to want to use the time and effort to be able to do this.
Nope, that is completely not true.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. I'm like, I know, Dave, I know you're super involved and pretty close with like how tournaments are and how they run. Between that and my involvement with the convention I work with, and I know that's just with this convention, but they have some pretty good prize pots. There's a lot of passion. Like, yes, there's power here, but a lot of these people that are in that do run these tournaments usually have a lot of passion and a lot of care, especially when it comes to trying to. I think there is at least some sort of a smidgen of concern with accessibility. And David, like, how likely, just in your opinion, how likely would it be that if someone were to approach someone at like Evo or something that want to enter a tournament, but they have an adaptive controller? Okay. How likely do you think it would be that they would take the time to take a look at it and to approve or deny it?
They wouldn't. That's not a thing that really happens like that. Like there are. So, with stuff like that,
is that because they know that they won't even give them the time of day, or is it just because it's not a common enough issue?
It's not a common enough issue. So basically, like for stuff like that, it kind of works off of an honor system until it doesn't. So when you sign up, you are almost always expected to bring your own controller. The issue that comes down with that is that, with something like Evo, no tournament organizer has the time to
regulate everyone's
10,000 controllers. So it's more so a matter of, we're going to let you rock until we catch something in a match. Like if you have like a macro on or something like that.
Or if you have a custom skin on, that's inappropriate.
If you know
what I'm talking about, David.
Yeah. It's not necessarily an accessibility thing.
I know. It just reminded me of that because it took them so long to like be like, hey guys, get that off the screen. Why is Chun-Li naked?
The point I'm trying to get at is that for controllers like that, as long as you're not in the middle of the match and you press a button and you do like a 25 hit combo, nobody's going to stop you with your controller. There are people that make controllers out of Pizza Hut boxes. Nobody cares.
Now, in regards to this comment here, like, yeah, so whenever, like with game developers doing that, like, yeah, like they can do that, and then if that gets out and goes viral, then they have to deal with the ramifications of that. Because I have absolutely seen people drop an entire game for less.
Now, I will say, and I think in terms of the tournament, something that, or really in any situation, with the exception of, and I've seen it now, even with the Street Fighter. Like, I have seen the limitations. I've tried playing with all three different controls, and I do like modern controls because it gives you more accessibility than simple controls. It allows you to kind of still customize your playstyle because it frees up some movement. You can do certain combinations. So up special, down special, back special, forward special. That's 4 different special techniques versus a button for special. And now you only have one special technique that you can do. So playing through the different control options, if I see a situation where somebody's playing a saxophone or they're playing a harp and they're able to beat me in a fighting game, it's cool. I'm not supposed to be playing that game. And I think that might actually work in the opposite end for accessibility, because I would probably retire my controller from playing that game past that. And hopefully you all see the humor in that, and it doesn't sound, like an asshole statement. But no, it's absolutely a thing where I could see how the honor system would come into play for the tournament style, because one thing about it, if they're using an adaptive controller, if they're using a specialty controller, if it's not I can press 3 buttons and 50 inputs happen, as long as it doesn't have those kind of controls built into it, then yeah, I think it's, if it's still every action needs a response, you have to press something or do something or trigger something to make something happen, then it's still going to come down to that player's skill, even with their controller, and I think that's why characters like Blind Warriors Vin, stand out the way they do, because they've already had to overcome this one thing. That's a funny comment. They've already had to overcome this one obstacle, but then on top of that, they had to overcome, the difficulty of the game. And they had to do it with this adaptive controller, which in a sense customizes it for them. But it also, comes with its own challenges, because if two people, like, you can't necessarily say like, oh, well, since they're using this adaptive controller, both players have to use this adaptive controller, because now I can't use the turntable to play the game the same way. I don't know how to play a harp normally, so how am I going to use a harp to play a video game? Some guy used a recorder and played through Elden Ring, and just some of these things that people do. There's a lot of talented people out there, way more talented than me, to be able to do some of the stuff in gaming that they're doing. It's quite impressive. So I think having to overcome the standard complications with gaming, but then on top of that, to improve upon that with, a different type of controller in itself can be, somewhat impressive. So as far as accessibility in gaming.
So kind of wanted, because kind of got away from the point a little bit, because there was a specific reason why I wanted to bring up the issue of accessibility. Well, there's a couple of reasons why I brought it up.
Okay.
The first one is a friend of mine. My Life is an RPG. Go follow them on all the things. They are unfortunately dealing with some health issues. Like, basically their main their main finger, they have to get the joints fused in them, right? And that causes a problem because he mostly plays fighting games, right? So without the use of that finger, it makes it significantly harder. Which is why which is why they're always an advocate for accessibility options in gaming, because he's already had like a bunch of health issues in general, but this is just kind of the icing on the cake. But then the other reason I brought it up, because this conversation popped up again because of the update for Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Grand Blue Fantasy Versus Rising. They made a change to the game where before you still had like simple controls where you could just like press a button and you would do one of your special moves. But you take like the damage wouldn't be as high as if you would have done like a normal one, and that move becomes on a cooldown. So you had to wait a little bit just to use that move again if you use the simple control, which kind of balanced it out. Now they made the choice that regardless if you do the full command or if you do the simple input, you don't get a penalty, like at all. And that has divided the community because, I don't want to have to dumb down my game, blah, 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 blah. And then you have the other 85% of the community who's like, okay, no, that's a good change. It's whatever. Whatever. I probably won't play it that much myself, but whatever. It's fine. It's cool. It gets more people in the game. I can play more people, right? Cool. Whatever. Don't give a fuck. So now, the reason I bring it up is that because I've had several conversations with a lot of the people who are like, yeah, I don't need my games to be simplified and blah, 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 because it goes against the original intention of the developer.
You've been arguing on Twitter again, David.
No, not on Twitter. But
I thought you learned from Skullgirls. But
the question that I keep raising to people, and they have yet to answer me on this, if you say that dumbing down the controls takes away from the initial the original experience that the developer wanted to portray, then people who actually need the sessions in the game, right, they're not getting the intended experience regardless if the simple controls or whatever options they have in the game or not. They weren't getting the intended experience from the jump. So only adding more options so people can get that experience only helps. And nobody has ever said anything to me yet about why that does not help. So the question that I pose to both of you at this moment is, when does it become an issue in accessibility where a person cannot even press start? Is the accessibility option still an issue, or is it because this is not the intended experience of the developer?
Like, as in an issue where, like, they're quadriplegic or something like that?
Yeah, like if they're quadriplegic or they can't hear or they can't see. There's something like that.
Well, see, that's where I was saying before with there's only so much that developers can take into account for as far as accessibility goes. I think it'd be fantastic for there to be some sort of like disability guidelines that aren't necessarily a law, but just something that can be referenced by like the ADA or something like that, for a baseline of what to have as far as accessibility goes. And then from there, like I said before, I think personally it'd be a great idea to do something along the lines of, then it is up to the player to try and find hardware that will help make these things accessible. And so you have, first of all, a certain guideline that developers can choose to follow if they wish, but they don't necessarily have to. But there are at least clear spell out guidelines for have these minimum things so that it makes your game more accessible for people who have to hunt down custom controllers. because it is, in my opinion, I think it isn't feasible for developers to be able to even attempt to account for every single disability or accessibility problem that people might have with the game. So if they can kind of meet halfway, I think that's the best compromise.
I like the idea of having the ADA make a set of minimum guidelines as a suggested reference that every game should have, and I think included with that there might need to be. And I don't know where this would fall, if it would be like the moral and ethics committee who would tack in on that. But I think that it's going to fall into the exact same area of the people who ensure that games have multiple servers, multiple lobbies, and things like that as well. Part of what I see to be the not really issue, if a person can't even press start. If we're trying to look at this from the standpoint of the developer's intention, in fairness, we have to look at this from the standpoint of the developer's capabilities. Because if you look at, as just even something as simple as when we talk about the difficulty level, if the difficulty for a game is set at medium and there is a hard option and then an extra hard option, you have the option to put it on easy, to play it on medium, or play it on hard. That is a choice. But the developer intended for you to play the game on medium. That is where the right balance of character and enemy, that balance exists in the game the way it was intended. If I have absolutely no skill in video games and I choose to then play that game, I don't really get to then make the argument that this game is too hard, even if I play it on easy and I still find that challenge, because I have to look at it from the desired intention of the developer. I think that kind of gets, honestly, that's kind of a slippery slope there. I do think we would probably do better, and it might be the best course of action would be to have something that is at least a minimum requirement. And I've got to agree with Linda 100%. Have like this minimum standard, and then some legwork has to be done on the part of the player to accommodate, to maybe meet those minimums.
Now, I think I kind of get another way you can look at that question too, from what David was asking. And it's kind of a thing of like, okay, well, basically, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think from what you're saying too is maybe something along the lines of the developer wants this game to be this specific experience. And if this isn't accessible to you by playing it with normal means, then too bad, so sad. Now, if that's the case, we've seen similar things with that before in the past, with game developers just being pretentious dicks. Kojima is kind of one of them to a point, but that may not have been your intention of how you were saying it, but I was thinking about that while Sam was talking as well, and I could see that being another way you could look at it. And in that case, that's just the developers being a dick, just saying my artwork needs to be enjoyed in a certain experience, or I don't want you experiencing it at all.
Okay, so here's all right. So here's where I was getting at with that question. The answer, it's kind of a trick question. The answer is that it doesn't matter what the developer's intention was. It doesn't matter at all, because at the end of the day, their main goal is to get their games in as many hands as possible. So the issue is not whether or not the accessibility option, it's not necessarily the fact that does this line up with the developer's intentions. We don't care. There should be accessibility options in games regardless of the developer's intention. That is not anything that's up for debate at this point, because we've seen it done and done well. Right. Like I said, Last of Us 2, PUBG does it. From what I hear, because I haven't played it yet, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart has really good accessibility options.
So are there games with no accessibility options?
Yes, lots. There are a lot. Well, there's every game has some sort of accessibility option, but they're not as fleshed out as some as ones I've been mentioning.
Right. Because there's no standard.
There is no standard. Because there is no standard, because it hasn't been a widespread vocal issue.
It's still very much a developing industry.
Yeah, so it's not something that has been brought up vocally up until a couple of years ago. This is a whole new thing that's happening right now, and now developers are starting to kind of fall in line, because again, we got to get our games in as many hands as possible. Doesn't matter if those hands don't open up all the way. It doesn't matter if they don't have hands at all. We got to get those games in front of people as soon as we possibly can, as fast as we can. And what does that mean? Okay, maybe we make the high contrast mode. Maybe we make it so that, in my fighting game, if I can't see, let's go ahead and flip this switch here so they can press a button, and that makes it that all of the footprints or the foot sounds happen, and you can hear it, and you can make informed decisions off of that information alone, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
So I do want to touch back on a comment there from Jeffrey about FIFA has house rule section where you can make your own rules for every game you play. You can do that in fights in Street Fighter. So
yes,
I don't know. So there's that. But what made me think of that was Smash has kind of similar things where you can change rule sets.
Yeah. Well, that's
the matches, which I think would kind of be in a similar vein to that.
Well, that's fighting games in general. They all have options like that. You have you can cater the play style to not play style, what you can do within matches pretty up to how many rounds you got, how many if there's going to be a timer or not, if there's a handicap for one or both players. There's plenty of options that you can enable or disable before you even start fighting. That's especially you can do that, all the stuff that I mentioned, plus you can remap your buttons, you can
you can turn items on and off, stuff like that.
You can turn items on and off,
stuff change your amount of people you have, your amount of guys.
Yeah, so rounds and stuff. Yeah, so basically those options have existed in fighting games since fighting game options have been a thing. So that is not necessarily something that we would have to worry about. It's more so just if people want to play the fighting game, how can we make it that maybe little Timmy can't really play because little Timmy's 6. He can't really play the game as well as his dad can or something. Or we got.
But the developer intended.
I was about to say that actually gets into a whole different thing, because then what do you have accessibility for? Little Timmy is just too young for it. It's not meant for his age group.
Well, let me kind of share. This is what I'm saying. I'm saying is that's little Timmy want to play with his dad, but little Timmy can't throw out the combos like his dad can. Boom, modern controls. Timmy got one button specials. Cool. All right. Blind Warrior. He wants to play the new Street Fighter, but he can't see. So he can't see what's going on the screen, and he needs help with that. Boom. You got audio options. Flip them things on and tweak it to however you want. Get in there, play some fighting games, baby. I'm colorblind. Boom. High contrast mode. Boom. Colorblind mode. Boom. Stuff like that. You got so many options that you can put in different games and different genres, which work in every genre. It doesn't matter. Gears 5 has great accessibility options in the multiplayer, no less, too. So that's not necessary. So if you tell me that it can't be done, I'll point you straight to Gears 5 and tell you exactly how you're wrong. So it's the whole reason I wanted to have this conversation is more so that people are being entitled, saying that the game's not for you because you can't do so and so and so. And I raised the question, well, why not? If Broly Legs can win Evo by using just his mouth, then goddamn this guy who can't see or this guy who can't hear all that well, he could fucking play fighting games if he wants to. I don't give a damn. Because we just especially in the fighting game community, we just want to play games with dudes We don't care if you don't have a hand or if you have like crippling anxiety or whatever.
Well, one day we'll live in a world where you want to play with dudettes as well.
Wait, so you want to do what?
Said one day we'll live in a world where you want to play with dudettes as well. It's like we just want to play with dudes.
Gender neutral, Linda.
I know. I'm a dude. He's a dude. She's a dude because we're all dudes.
Yeah, exactly. So the point I'm saying is that like you don't have to. You can't gatekeep something like this because of somebody can't. Maybe they aren't like physically as able as you are, or their mental health is built differently than yours is. That shouldn't stop anybody. I'm dead. That shouldn't stop anybody from playing anything, especially fighting games. Because fighting games itself is the fighting game community, as like the fighting game genre itself is a community of people who just want to play the fighting game, and that's really all there is to it. So if you are in the community and you're gatekeeping the game because this guy can't do a combo because he can't see out of one eye and like his foot's banged up or whatever, then you're not a part of the community, because everybody else in the community is just like, yeah, come on, man, get in here, we'll set your controller up and then we'll teach you some combos or some shit. Just nobody cares except just play the game. And I can't speak for every other community, but having accessibility options in games does nothing but help. And that's all there is to it. That's all I got.
Yeah. I do think that it is a wonderful topic to bring up, and right on, as we get games like Street Fighter coming out, there's been other games that have had some really great accessibility in order to kind of prepare.
I've got a thing to add whenever you guys have a minute. I just didn't want to interrupt anyone, but go ahead.
Oh, by all means, go ahead. I was just going to say there's been games previously that had great accessibility options, and maybe they didn't get the same, is the word platform? They don't have the same notoriety. Last of Us 2 is a big enough game, but there was a lot going on with that game separately that it may have just kind of been, it got a little overshadowed what was in there and what was available. And I've also kind of noticed, like you mentioned, Gears, Ratchet and Clank, but past that, it seems like it's more times than not more of the indie titles and not some of the larger, more mainstream titles. And I think that's very telling. And we do need to get something somewhere. And it needs to be something that's not just like a corny hashtag trending, as Linda was saying earlier. Like, it doesn't need to be a corny hashtag. It needs to be a legitimate sit down conversation, think piece. Somebody needs to put something together, and they need to take it to ADA. They need to take it to, I would say start with someone like at Microsoft, start with someone at Sony, so that if this game comes out,
hey, pitch it to both
on Microsoft. Oh yeah, like let them. Yeah, there you go. Like, who's going to do it first?
See, Microsoft is already super interested in this pitch.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it might help you get some more people, and I think that would probably be one of the better ways. And I think if we get into, if we live in a world where that becomes more commonplace, I think we will see more people in the gaming community improve the overall community, because it won't be as, the gates will be opened. The more people we have playing, the more people are in the lobby, the less likely you have to deal with that guy or that guy, because now there's a lot more people there to begin with. And so I think it would have some, some long-lasting effects and some trickle-down effects into other areas that would help improve the gaming community and get us away from some of these gatekeepers for different parts. Linda, you said you had something else. What you want to add?
Yeah. So we were kind of mentioning, I know someone mentioned before about David, I think this was one of the things you had mentioned specifically was the thing of like, if we change, like, if devs are like, oh, but this is how a game is supposed to be played, right? And if this is not accessible for you, then I guess this is not the game for you. So now, I know it's not exactly right, but I'm just kind of bringing it back around to that topic. Anyway, so I can kind of understand to an extent where there does have to be some kind of a line drawn with that. Which is why I like the idea of having the ADA guidelines, because you could have a thing of like, oh, well, I really want to play this Dark Souls game, but they don't have an easy mode that's easy enough for me. It's like, well, that's also kind of what Dark Souls is. It's supposed to be a very challenging type of game, but it's similar to like, oh, well, this Silent Hill game is like really popular, but it's too spooky for me, and I really would play it if I could turn the fog off. But like, and I can understand where turning the fog off could actually be like an actual accessibility thing if someone has some eyesight issues. But assuming that's not the case, it's literally just because, or like they want to play Five Nights at Freddy's, but they don't want the jump scares. And it's kind of a thing of like, that's kind of what the game is though. And I think once again, that's where the guidelines would step in and kind of fix that. So if someone were to try and bring that up, be like, hey, we followed these ADA guidelines, they're listed out here. If you have sensitivity to jump scares, to where you cannot play this game, if there's jump scares, then this game is just not for you. It's like, oh, I really want to play basketball, but I am deathly afraid of balls of all kinds.
Yeah,
I can't really make the ball into a cube. It doesn't really work the same way. So it's not out of laziness or out of spite or out of like any kind of negative feelings. It's a genuine thing of, you cannot enjoy the game as intended, because you cannot, like, you actually have something that is preventing you from being able to, like, this is not something that can be remedied at all in any capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I think even, and Dave, if you want to jump on that first, by all means.
So what I was going to say earlier is that when I was saying that earlier, it's not the developers themselves saying that this is the intention, this is how we want you to play the game. It's usually somebody in the fan base who's being a little shit about it. It's not.
I didn't necessarily mean exactly that word for word. I was just trying to generally bring it back up again. So.
Yeah. Right. So I think in a situation like that, though, I think there is an understandably. See, it's hard to say an understandably clear line, but I had a nice little internal chuckle when you talked about the horror games, because I equated to even something simple like movies. You know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking, like, if I don't like watching scary movies, I can't be mad and be like, well, I really want to watch Saw, but all the gore. No, that is what that movie is about. That is the point of that movie.
Like, I would love to play Street Fighter, but it's a fighting game and I hate it.
You know what I'm saying? So I think if you're talking about changing an element of the game that changes the core of what the game is, that is not the same as saying I'm happy to play the game as intended, so long as I can move the character, so long as I can do the things in the game that need to be done. Now, I think it's within a certain level of accommodation, and it is absolutely available to say that, an Xbox controller has a set number of buttons. A PlayStation controller has a set number of buttons. Now, what I find to be very interesting sometimes is, of course, they have found a way to increase the number of options in a game based on the combination of buttons. Now we start talking about perhaps some accessibility issues, because if I need to hold right trigger and then do an action, but holding right bumper and do an action, if those are separate controls, then you may get to a point where you've got some limited capabilities based on the different buttons that you have access to.
I've actually got kind of an example for that real quick. It's like there's some indie, there's quite a few indie games where you kind of have to play what do you call it, Twister with the controller, and like keep certain buttons held down at certain times in weird combinations that can be difficult, even if you don't have any mobility issues with your hands. And it's kind of a thing of that's kind of the part of the game. So sometimes it's like a little indie game, but you can even have things like in Heavy Rain and Quantic Dream games in general. They love their little button holding combination weirdy buttons, as well as randomly yelling things like Jason. But
no, I mean I've been playing my Xbox Game Pass games. I've been trying to like just go through and randomly not even going to shameless plug. I've been trying to go through and play some of the different random games that are available on Game Pass since I pay for it every month.
Right.
And I was playing Exo Primal recently, and on Exo Primal you have, with the character that you're playing a mech. So you have like a variety of weapons available to you, a variety of specials available to you. And in order to execute certain functions, certain mobilities, and certain things, you have a primary shooting, a secondary shooting. When you want to, if you want to emote to somebody in game, you have one option. Then you have to press a different button. And all of these are like multiple button configurations to do. So when you want to like tell your team, hey, go over there, you have to like hold the right bumper and then press something on the D-pad. But if you want to wave to somebody, you have to hold the the left trigger, left bumper. You have to hold the left trigger while manipulating something on the D-pad. Well, all of your movement is on the left thumbstick. And it's like you're trying to do all of this at the same. So it's like there is no walking while pointing and wait. Like you can't do all of it. And it's like there are some limitations, and that's for, again, able-bodied people using the controller the way it was designed. But in order for a person to be able to play the game, there needs to be like a clear number of mapped out controls for the standard gameplay. And that needs to have the accessibility options. And I absolutely agree. I think every game should have a minimum. Like you said, it needs to go through the ADA, and there should be a minimum accessibility requirement. Still leaving some work to be done by the person, the end user, to do their part and get a controller that is adaptable. But yeah, I think there should always be an option, because if it's something that's in the development stage of the game, to code if this then that, if there's 16 button configurations that are needed to play the game, you should be able to map over those 16 button controls to anything, so that any person can at least move the character, start the game, and do the things in the game that allow a person to play.
See, and I still think that it should be something that is mostly addressed by or taken care of by like a small company. But I feel like they should absolutely have someone bigger like Microsoft or Sony, because we know Nintendo wouldn't do something like this. Microsoft or Sony to, I guess, kind of take them in and give them all the resources they need, help them build a team of people and train people to do things to a certain standard, a certain way that might be overlooked otherwise by a major corporation. So you still get that care and that warmth that you would get from a small business, which you need that for something this sensitive. Yeah. But you would have the strong arm, the powerhouse behind you to give you the visibility that you need, so people can actually find what you do and what you offer.
I think we got to figure out just how to write it up, and we pitch it over to Microsoft. They probably be all on board if it would sell more their adaptive controllers anyway. And we get them to partner with the ADA and create a standard that can then be held by everyone in the video game industry.
They can kickstart it by donating these like Xboxes and these controllers to a variety of like children's hospitals and things like that, and hell, even adult hospitals. Listen, adults want to play video games too.
I mean, honestly, if you think about it, remember they did that with the Kinect. When the Kinect first came out, they had like the developer program that they put out, and they were like, "Hey, see this Kinect camera? Show us what you can do with it." If they did that and said, "Hey, see this adaptive controller? What can we do to make games more accessible?" And that's the pitch right there. Damn it, we need to write this up.
God, we need to bring back support for something like a Kinect. So like camera-based, movement-based technology, rather than putting all of our eggs in the basket for VR. VR is great too, yes, but it's still clunky, and there's a lot of like really amazing games that you had freedom with playing on like a Kinect or something like that. I'd say a Kinect more than any of the other varieties they had of that, between the Sony Move and the iToys. And the obviously anything Nintendo's put out, because the fact it is just a motion tracking camera. Like, you saw the success they had with
Wii was all motion. So.
Well, I mean, like having a camera so that you don't have to like hold a controller. There's no like, you have arthritis, cool, no problem. You can still just like do
your body's the controller.
Body. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like,
but see now, but what if I can't move my body? Like, then we get it. But see, and that's
it's because it's just another form of accessibility that you can have.
And see, that's why we need to go and get our ADA standards for gaming, so that we can say, hey, well, if you can't move your body here, here's what you can do with the control. But then, of course, it's like, well, I think that then falls under, well, you're trying to play the game outside the way the game is designed, not the way it was intended, but you are changing the fundamental aspect of the game.
It's similar, like, your body. Let's say you have like Tourette's or something and you want to play Phasmophobia. That's probably not a good idea, because they can hear the monster, the ghosts hear you.
Yeah.
So probably not a good idea.
Yeah, that game.
They've done, like, we need to play it on stream again, because they like had this major update. I think they're about to come out with it, or they've already implemented it. I think it hasn't come out yet though, but it's going to be huge, and I'm very excited.
All right. Well, we will. Maybe that'll be. No, we got to do. Next one has to be a music episode. We have to do a music special. It's a hip hop anniversary.
What about the one on the 30th? That's the day after my birthday.
The one on the 30th. I will let you. Okay, fine. Damn it.
Right. We do whatever Linda wants to do. Yay!
All right, we'll make it happen. We'll look at my schedule and see what's on the books that day. But yeah, that'll probably be the way we lean. So I got no problems with that. We'll make that happen. And
I'm doing all my birthday stuff outside of that. So like, by the time my actual birthday rolls around, I would have already done all my birthday stuff. I'll be birthdayed out. In fact, David, I'm actually a little sad I didn't ask you to take off on my birthday day itself, because then I won't have David all day, and I'll be very sad.
Well, depending on the day and what's happening, maybe we'll do some midday gaming and whatnot, because I may need to have more lighting and not have people in the house trying to sleep while I'm playing that game, because jump scare. All right. Well, this has been an enlightening episode of Weigh In Wednesday. Hopefully you learned something and you decided that you are not going to gatekeep accessibility to games. And if you want to be a part of the pitch, hit me up and let's figure out who we need to contact and who we need to talk to make that happen, because I would absolutely be on board to check into that. And maybe, we can reach out to, was it James? My Life is an RPG. What's his name?
David.
Yeah, my Life is an RPG. Yeah.
My Life is an RPG. Maybe we can reach out, talk with him, and we can see, how to move forward. Because I'm sure he's already started that discourse somewhere, and maybe we can just jump in and be like, hey, here's some other ideas that we discussed and thought about, and it would be great because it looks like he is fairly well established out here doing his thing.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, like we will
David, he's the one that gave you that thing you have, right?
No, that's Phil, of course.
Oh, okay, Phil, of course.
Phil, of course. Oh, Phil, tell Phil I said what's up.
Not different Phil.
No, I thought that's not Phil. Of course, that's not that Phil.
No,
Phil, of course, is a different Phil.
Yeah, our Phil, and then there's Phil, of course, which is David's friend.
See, I thought that was Phil, of course.
Different one.
Different Phils. Good to know. Good to know. Let's see. A hard time apparently is what you're getting because Linda's getting my time for birthday. So
I don't know. You haven't accepted the invite to my birthday party yet, so
you see how my schedule is. That is why I would put a maybe at best. And
you don't want to drive all the way up to Sandy Springs
for like an hour to hang, you know. But I'll do it. You see, I'll try to make the effort.
It's gonna be fun. We're gonna do like a little potluck thing. We're gonna do a taco bar.
Oh, and I gotta cook. Wait a minute.
You don't have to. We'll honestly have so many people bringing food. It's more of a thing of I just wanted to create an opportunity for people to make their favorite food that they want to share with other people. They want to share with their friends. Like, I really like this food and I wanted you to try it.
Gotcha. That's not the one I want. Where's the custom one? There it is. It's a little bit small. Okay. Well, we will discuss that. We will do that offline. And right, you know what I'm saying? Hands be cramping up, thumb all jacked up from gaming and just life in general. But I want to thank everyone who tuned in with us, who hung out with us, who gave us some comments and had some banter with us. Sen, just been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you hopping in here tonight. Jeff, thanks for being here, man. Hate that you weren't on the stream, but you brought some insight as you always do. And we had a new guest in the lobby today, Cassius Slay. Thank you for hanging out with us and having lots to talk about. This has been a very enlightening episode, and I hope everybody now has like a little bit more information about accessibility in gaming that they didn't have before. Be sure to check us out at all of our respective places and locations. You can find me, Elder Geek Sam. Find David Heroic Hat on everything. And check out Linda, the Coca-Cola Shark. That's Splenda MG. You can find her as well. We are Grown A Geeks. This has been Weigh-In Wednesday. We appreciate you being with us. We will see you next time. But today we are out of here. Peace.
Bye.